Okay, so now I want to talk about what makes GitHub special. So GitHub is not just a place for you to host your remote repositories. It's also got a bit of a social environment to it, and that comes along with some sort of like rights and responsibilities in a way. So the idea behind it is this. Here's an example. So as part of some of my work that I was doing with Mr. Barker, I was doing something with messing around with the Fitbit API. And this person, Peebles, created this particular library called Fitbit OAuth 2 that allows people to more easily connect to the Fitbit API. And I thought, great, this is working great. I installed it, downloaded it, tried to make it work, and it was not working for me. It was broken, and there's a small part of it that wasn't working. And so I thought, oh, I can fix this. And so, in order to fix this problem, I fixed it on my own computer, and then I wanted to sort of like push this change up to people's account, but I couldn't. And this is important. Um, it would be crazy if everyone could just blindly edit the code of everyone else on GitHub. GitHub would not exist if that was the case. And so, for the most part, unless you create that repository, you cannot push to it. Now, that's a slight lie. You can mess around with the settings and add collaborators and all this stuff. But for the most part, if you make the repository, you are the owner and you are the only one who can push to it. And so, instead, what you need to do is you need to communicate across different remote repositories. So the thinking behind this is the following. What I want you to imagine is this. So we've got this picture here where we've got two remote repositories. And so often you use the words upstream and origin. You can call them whatever you want. But for our example, this one would be like my version of the Fitbit library, and this would be like, what was it? Peebles' version of the repository. And so in the very beginning of everything, this is how the code began, right? So this person had some code, and I did not have that code. And so the very first thing I need to do is I sort of have two options available to me. I could clone down this way, right? I could clone their code down, but sorry, you can't read that. I could clone their code down, but the problem is if I make a change down here and I um, pull that code down here, then I would not be able to make my change. Sorry, duplicate and erase. I promise I'm getting better with this technology. I am getting there. If I made my new commit, I would not now be able to push this back up. And why not? Well, I don't own that repository. So if I make that change, I can't push it back up. This is not allowed. And so instead, you have a different workflow through this whole system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this. This doesn't work. I'm going to erase this and talk about what you should do instead. And what you should do instead is not clone this from here. You should instead do what's called forking. So we with like a green, and the process, and this is like a GitHub-only thing, is to fork a repository over to another repository. And what that means is it's now a copy of that repository over here. So once I've done a fork, this is what I've got. So, and you can see that up over here, you can see that I've got, this is my version of the repository, and it says it's forked from this version of it. And if you click over here, it's very confusing because like that looks the same except for that little bit of text up here. So that part can be super confusing. You always want to pay attention to which fork you're on. And so this is now my version of it. And if you look, it says this is one commit ahead of Peoples' version. Okay, great. So now what do? I still can't, I don't want to make this change up on GitHub. So now what I want to do is I want to, let me go back to the right thing here, go back to my picture. I now need to clone this down. And I've already done this. If I go back over to here, you see like I've got a copy of it here. And this is where things get kind of interesting. So if I say git remote, you see I've got two. I've got origin and I've got upstream. And if I say git remote -v for like the verbose mode, you see that origin is mine and upstream is people's. And so this is something you do very commonly because you want to keep track of, like, upstream will have all the latest and greatest changes on the, like, the quote unquote real version of it. And then origin, this is my fork of that real version. And so I can push and pull at will from origin. I can only pull from upstream. So that's the thing about open source code, is you can pull any of it down. You can clone any of it down, but you can't push to it. And so I can clone, or I did originally clone down this origin, and now I've got it. And so now I've got a picture that looks a bit like this. I'll duplicate that one and bring it down here. And so now this is the picture. I've got this on my local machine. And I also have a connection to my upstream and a connection to my remote if I wanted to. Okay, so I've got this. I then actually made my change. So I did my coding. Life is good. It actually wasn't all that too terribly much code here. So now I've got a picture that looks like this. Now remember, you actually can push to your own repositories. So I cannot push, I cannot push over here. That's not allowed, but I can push over to my own repository. So I'm in this point right here. I've made this change. I've committed this new change. I can now push that change up to my remote repository. And when I do that, I will get a picture that looks like this. I'll have a picture that looks like this with my sort of new changed commit. And now what you want to do is you want to say, like, how do I send my code over that way? Like, I want to give this person my code. And this is the second aspect of GitHub that is not a part of the Git protocol at all. It's something that's unique to GitHub. And that is called a pull request. So you cannot demand, in this case, I can't demand that Peoples accepts my code. What I can do is I can request that they pull my code in. So that's called a pull request. So again, a fork and a pull request, those are GitHub only operations. So if we go over here, you can see if I go to pull requests, and I don't see anything. And so why don't I see anything? It's because no one has submitted a pull request to my fork of people's repository. So if I go over here though, and I go to pull requests, at some point you will see, oh, mine isn't here. Anyways, maybe it got deleted or something, or maybe I just never did it and I'm lying to you all. But the next step in the operation is to request that Peoples accepts my change. And so this new pull request, you could submit a new pull request here. In fact, I probably could do this right as we speak. And so as we do this, we've sort of got base reference. Oh yeah, so this is a little bit confusing because this is saying just across the branches. But I actually want to compare across forks. And so the base repository with this, and then this could be like my version of it. And then here we go. So now it's giving me the option. This is like the actual code that I changed. And I'm not going to literally push, well, I can push this button, but I won't actually submit the pull request just so you can see. So this is going to say like, this is like, it's kind of like a pull, but it's not a pull. What I'm asking is like, please do this pull. And so I can create this pull request, and then I have to like talk to the person, this Peoples person, and say like, dear Peoples, please do this thing. And you'll probably want to explain it a little bit. And then you create the pull request, and then on the other side, the person has to accept the pull request or deny it, or you can have a bit of a back and forth. So if you go into like a, like a famous repository, like I think we have talked about the request library at some point, and you go into pull requests, and you just go into one of these, you can see like some of them have a good amount of discussion. Oh, this one has a good amount of discussion. Let's take a look. You can see what we're looking at here is like, this is the initial person's comment. They said like, here's the problem. Here's how I tried to fix it. And then there's all this discussion about like, does this work? Does this not work? You can even have little emoji responses. See, GitHub Social. It's fascinating. And at some point, the pull request is accepted or denied, or closed is a common thing here. This word closed is referring to this other pull request because this person says it that this particular one that they're talking about here is referring to another one, 4173. So that's forks and pull requests, which are GitHub specific operations that help you to communicate across forks.